being vulnerable, then you're being selfish. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, there's a huge stigma around being vulnerable, especially for men. And for some reason, throughout history, it's been known that for men, or it's like this stigma that if you're vulnerable, then you're weak. And men shouldn't talk about their feelings. Men shouldn't talk about certain things because they're strong, they're warriors, X, Y, and Z. But in reality, there is so much strength in power and vulnerability, not only just in your friendships or your intimate relationships, but also with your family members and your strangers. And so let's give you one example about how vulnerability can really impact other people's life. And first of all, before I get into that, think about what's the one thing that prevents people from being vulnerable. The number one thing. What do you think it is? It's fear of being judged. That is the number one cause of people preventing people from being vulnerable. Now, if you look at the fear of being judged, okay, that is definitely a big fear for a lot of people. But when you look at how many people you can help by being vulnerable, you have to think of and be selfless and think of, hmm, is my vulnerability possibly going to help somebody else? Or is this possibly going to make me feel judged? And you have to figure out which one outweighs the other. For me, I have found that vulnerability, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's talking about my diagnosis. I don't care if it's talking about my past. I don't care if it's talking about my drinking. You never know who can hear your story, listen to it, resonate with it, and feel empowered, even empowered enough to reach out to me or you or whoever and say, oh my gosh, I really resonated with that story. That exact same thing happened to me. I'm so glad to hear that I'm not the only one. Boom, that is a huge win. And honestly, the possibility of that happening alone is worth the, oh my gosh, I'm so scared if people are going to judge me. Who cares? We're all judging each other all the time. And usually we're judging ourselves, first of all and foremost. But when we're judging people and looking around other people, you're simply looking at different aspects of them and trying to figure out certain things about a person to figure out if you're safe, to figure out if you'll kind of like vibe with them, to feel out if you're attracted to them, to figure out different things. We're judging each other and making inferences on people all the time. So to be afraid of being judged, who freaking cares? You got to get that through your mind. Who cares? Just be yourself. And I'll just go over one example. When I went traveling, I was supposed to meet up with my girlfriend in Costa Rica. And then certain things happened where she couldn't come. Then we kind of like broke up for a little bit. And then she said, oh no, I'll meet up with you in Brazil. And then we broke up again, which the second breakup hurt even worse because I was like, oh, we're gonna make things work. And then she just went bam, just nailed me again. And to be honest, it really hurt me. Like it affected me for months. And I remember every time I kind of got the opportunity when I met these, men, random men that I met traveling, I would talk about it. Oh, how you feeling? Like, do you have any, are you single or whatever? Like, no, I just went through a breakup. And I can honestly tell you that sparked at least 10 different conversations, like very intimate conversations with mostly men where they felt comfortable enough to open up about their relationships and what they've been through and the struggles they've had with their breakups and how they've overcome it. So that just that one situation that was, uncomfortable and difficult for me to go through opened up this whole can of worm for people to be vulnerable, right? So you can be that conduit for that conversation that can lead to growth and healing. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, these dudes are probably going to judge me because, my girlfriend broke up with me. No, not at all. This is how I'm feeling, and I'm sure somebody else will feel the same way. And if not, it doesn't matter. And I'm actually looking for advice on this subject, to be honest. So it's kind of like a When you're vulnerable, you're able to get kind of feedback from other people, whether it be your intimate relationships, friendships, or random people. And then you get to also be able to hold space for them so that they may be able to relate with what you're going through, can provide feedback, and also feel comfortable for themselves to be vulnerable as well. So it's like this beautiful circle of honesty when you're able to be vulnerable. And when you hold that in, you just you eliminate that process from even happening. When somebody says, "Hey, how are you doing?" When I was thinking in my mind, like, "Hey, I'm really going through this breakup," but I just say, "Oh, everything's fine. Yeah, I'm single. Yeah, I'm ready to roll." And then that's when the whole like drinking comes into play and smoking because you have these feelings and you're not comfortable enough with being vulnerable. And then you just mask it by distracting yourself by partying, drinking, smoking, vaping, you name it. Like meaningless sex. I've done it all and I've been there, but I'm telling you what, being vulnerable is 10 times better because you don't only help or have an opportunity to help yourself, you also help others. So, when I'm vulnerable about like the things of my past, I'm not doing that for me. I'm doing that because I know that somebody else may resonate with that. And that far outweighs the thinking in my mind of, oh, maybe I'll be judged. Who cares? Really, who freaking cares? And this really works in your intimate relationships. Almost all of the relationships that create tension and friction and disconnect happens from not having a good communication foundation. Like you have to be able to communicate everything in a relationship. And if even from from your family members to your intimate relationships to your good friendships, like you have to be very honest. If there's some sort of rift being caused in your relationships, you have to have vulnerability to be honest, to be like, hey, listen, you know, it makes me feel X, Y, and Z when you do this. And I'm just letting you know that it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. And could we work through this? That's being vulnerable. And if you don't do that, if you just hold it all in and then explode with anger and frustration, like that's just not being emotionally stable and having emotional regulation. And that's caused by not having a good communication flow, by not being vulnerable. So I'm just showing you guys like how being vulnerable is so critical for all of your relationships. And if you're not vulnerable, it's gonna wreak havoc in all of your relationships, no matter what they are. So when people say, like, oh, men shouldn't be vulnerable, there's weakness in vulnerability, absolute bullshit. Maybe that's back in the caveman days or back when, we were all men were fighting wars like back in 300, with all the guys with the abs and the shields and they fight until death. Yeah, sure. If you if you want to say that, yeah. But in modern day society, when you want to have an authentic and real true relationship with your loved ones or even random people, vulnerability is an absolute superpower because you invite other people to do the exact same. And you never know what one conversation might completely change people's lives. Because I guarantee you that I can think of three conversations right now that my friends or people that I just met had made with me that changed my life. Just a few statements that they've said because they were vulnerable, because they were honest, because they stayed in their lane, it changed my life. So you can do the exact same by being vulnerable. And honestly, if you're not vulnerable, you're going to ruin your relationships. It doesn't matter what relationship it is. If you're going to just cut yourself off because you're not comfortable enough to have that difficult conversation and be vulnerable, you are going to miss out on a lot of beautiful relationships. And you're going to cut off that relationship that is just so beautiful, and you might just change somebody's life by you opening up your story. And you have to make sure that you understand that it's worth it to be able to possibly change somebody's life simply by being honest and truthful about how you're feeling versus the fear of being judged or ostracized or pushed out or outcasts. Screw that. I'm gonna tell you what, vulnerability is sexy and it's freaking incredible and strong, and you can do it too. Much love, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and write down any comments, questions, concerns you might have about vulnerability and how it's impacted your life. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night.